This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Sudan's military council and opposition coalition reach power-sharing deal. Africa's free trade treaty seen as a major step on the road to economic integration. Libya's interior minister blames airstrike on foreigners. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. In business, the World Bank grants Kenya $750 million for housing projects. And in sports, the Africa Cup of Nations returns with Benin and Morocco playing in the first round of 16 tie. We begin in Sudan, where Sudan's ruling military council and a coalition of opposition and protest groups have reached an agreement to share power during a transition period. This agreement will lead to elections after months of protests, setting off street celebrations by thousands of people in the country.
The military council and the opposition held talks in Khartoum for the past 2 days and agreed to establish a sovereign council by rotation between the military and civilians for a period of 3 years or more. Protesters erupted in celebration when the news broke.
Within this context, the two sides have also agreed upon a detailed, transparent, patriotic, independent investigation into the various violent and tragic events that the country has lived through in the past few weeks. The parties have also agreed upon forming a civilian government called the Government of Independent, Skillful Patriotism, headed by a prime minister of similar qualities. Finally, both sides have agreed upon postponing the establishment of Legislative Council until the Sovereign Council and civilian government is in order.
We thank the African and Ethiopian mediators for their efforts and patience. We also thank our brothers in the Forces for Freedom and Change for their good spirit. Would like to reassure all political forces, armed movements, and all those who participated in the change, from young men and women, that this agreement will be comprehensive and will not exclude anyone, and will also live up to the ambitions of the Sudanese people and its pure revolution.
Although the formation of the Legislative Council has been postponed, the parties agreed to launch a transparent, independent investigation into violent, deadly events in recent weeks.
A nation that is like its revolution, one that suits its greatness, its nobleness and pride. This agreement opens the path for establishment of transitional bodies which will begin executing reformation programs in all social, political and economic aspects, the first of which is the issue of peace and the independent investigations and punishment of the killers of the martyrs.
The two sides had previously agreed that the Forces for Freedom and Change coalition would take 2/3 of the Legislative Council's seat before security forces crushed a sit-in protest on June 3rd, killing dozens. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
We are joined by Dr. Nabil Negim El-Din, an independent researcher and author of international politics based in Cairo. Dr. Nabil, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Well, Sudan's military council and the opposition have reached a power-sharing agreement. Which areas of this agreement are key to a smooth transition in Sudan? Doctor.
Thanks for having me, and I would like to start by saying that the positive thing that at last we came to a sort of, a document which the both parties are willing to sign. I would like to just shed some light on the agreement, which is concentrates on the 11-member sovereign council, which is 5 military and 5 civilians, and the 11th one is going to be agreed upon by both sides, and some sources say it's going to be a retired general. Anyway, that sovereign council is the ruling body. The second part of the agreement, which is the executive body, the cabinet, which the responsibility of forming that cabinet is upon the FFC, the Forces of Freedom and Change. The third one, which is the legislative body, the parliament, is going to be postponed till they form and activate the first two bodies. The fourth point of the agreement is the Independent National Commission to investigate all the violence which has occurred in Sudan since the April the 11th. To be honest with you, after almost 7 months since the beginning of all situation, and after 2 days, we have a 1 month break of the negotiation. Everybody is happy to get that result, thanks to the Afro-Ethiopian mediation. Now, the devil is always in the details.
Well, Doctor, we're happy that everyone is happy, but unpack it for us. What does this agreement really mean for the Sudanese people and the region at large?
To be honest with you, the stability of Sudan is quite necessary for the African Union and for the major player in the region, because if Sudan is not stable, it will open the gates for a lot of transcontinental problems, like, you know, the illegal immigrants, terroristic groups, etc. So that leads us to the responsibility of the African Union and the Arab League and the international community. They are all invited to support this transitional period in Sudan to go ahead smoothly. Otherwise, there's a lot of differences between the parties. And as I said in my first answer, we have to be very careful that the devil is on the details.
All right, Doctor, before we let you go, my final question, you spoke of differences. What do you think needs to be done, though, to ensure that this agreement actually holds?
Okay, the Sovereign Council itself, we don't know the mandate of that body, and as well as the cabinet, how the FFC, the Forces of Freedom and Change, would get over the deep differences among the civil team. They have a lot of differences between themselves and the old classical political powers like Hizb al-Ummah and Hizb al-Ittihadi and the military movement. There is about 5 strong military movements in Sudan, and those movements have got to be involved. So I think it is a quite historical moment for Sudan, and I think the parties has got, all of them has got to behave according to that responsibility.
All right, Dr. Nta El-Din, thank you for your insight and analysis. Thank you for breaking it down for us. Meanwhile, the African Union says its position on Sudan remains that power must be handed over to civilians. The AU has, however, welcomed the great progress that has seen military leaders and the opposition alliance agree to a transition plan. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi reports from Addis Ababa.
Sudan will remain suspended from the African Union until it can show progress towards power being totally in the hands of civilians. Opposing Sudanese factions have now adopted a proposal along the lines African Union suggested for the country. The parties have agreed to a 3-year transition period. Control of a sovereign council will rotate between the two sides, and an independent technocratic government will be formed. The African Union says both sides agree that violence seen in recent weeks will also be investigated. A planned mass protest on July 13th may not happen since both sides now have agreed to a dialogue. Coleta Joy, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Africa is set to make history by launching a free trade area at the weekend. Ministers from across Africa are meeting in Niamey to make this operational. The AFCA aims to bring all 54 members of the African Union together in a single market by removing trade barriers such as tariffs across Africa. Let's take a look.
The Africa Free Continental Trade Area looks to create a market worth $3.4 trillion. It is expected to boost regional trade and has the largest number of participating countries since the formation of the World Trade Organization. It will be a market for 1.2 billion people.
Indeed, ZLECAf aims to intensify trade throughout the continent and ultimately to build an integrated continental market. It's a remarkable achievement and one that can be described as historic, in which the AU Commission, the Ministers of Trade, the regional economic communities, our traditional partners, and a battery of experts made available by member states have invested themselves with unparalleled dedication.
Talks on the agreement began back in 2002, but it officially came to life at the end of May after 22 countries ratified the treaty. On Tuesday, the FCTA was given a major boost when Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, announced that President Muhammadu Buhari would sign the agreement in Niamey.
Over the last 6 months, the Commission, in close collaboration with the Permanent Representatives Committee and experts from our member states, have continued to work tirelessly to make the implementation of the flagship projects identified by Agenda 2063 and in some cases officially launched since 2018 by the heads of state and government more readable.
The ongoing AU summit in Niamey will launch the operational phase of FCTA at the weekend, but observers caution key details still need to be thrashed out. Skeptics also fear the deal will negatively impact small manufacturers and family farms as borders are fully open to imports. At present, only 16% of trade by African nations is with continental neighbors. Chomgono, CGTN.
A Libyan minister claims that a foreign country was behind the airstrikes that hit a migrant detention center in the capital, Tripoli. Fatih Bashaga did not name any countries or provide any evidence. On Tuesday, an airstrike hit a detention center for mainly African migrants in a suburb inside the Libyan capital of Tripoli. At least 44 people were killed and more than 130 others were wounded.
The Tripoli government has blamed forces loyal to renegade military commander Khalifa Haftar for Tuesday's airstrike on detention centers. Interior Minister Fatih Bashaga now claims that a foreign country was involved.
The world has witnessed that the illegal migration center was bombed by an F-16 aircraft, and they know very well that it was bombed by an F-16 aircraft that came from outside the Libyan border. They could not condemn this action, and we're sure now that the power of money had done its job, even to very powerful countries.
The LNA has denied the accusations, although Haftar has received aid from Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Russia. The UN Security Council also failed to condemn the recent attack on the detention center for migrants. Thousands of migrants live in detention centers across the country under the control of Libyan authorities in terrible conditions. Both the Tripoli government and migrants are calling on the international community to help stop the conflict.
We appeal to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, International Organization for Migration, and the embassies to take care of us for humanity, no more, no less.
We're asking Europe to address the problem in a radical way, and not to prevent the entry of migrants, but to provide jobs and investments. We can also cooperate to protect southern Libya, and also cooperate in the establishment of development areas in southern Libya so as to absorb these huge numbers, willing and eager to migrate to Europe.
Libya has been in chaos since 2011, following the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi. Since then, rival governments have been fighting for power and control of resources. Chomrono, CGTN.
A boat carrying migrants sank on Wednesday off the port town of Zarzis. 82 of the migrants who had been on board were missing. Fishermen pulled 4 men from the sinking boat. One of the 4 died later in hospital. Only 4 survivors who were rescued 9 miles off Zarzis. Informed Coast Guard said they had set out from Libya and that dozens had drowned. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi brings us more on that report.
At least 82 migrants from sub-Saharan Africa have drowned while trying to reach the Italian island of Lampedusa from Libya. The boat capsized off the coast of Zarzis in Tunisia. Only 4 people have survived the new tragedy in the Mediterranean basin.
We left the Libyan coast at midnight. We faced trouble at 5 a.m. and the boat sank off at 12 p.m. Many people died, especially from Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso. They all disappeared in the sea.
The survivor recounts the horrible scene of women, children and young people drowning. There were so many victims that the sea was covered with bodies of migrants.
Young people and 4 women died, including a pregnant one. One woman drowned with her baby in her hands. We could not do anything to save them. We were 4 survivors. We left the boat and we were rescued by Tunisian sailors who took us to the hospital.
The survivors were sheltered by the regional office of the Red Crescent and the civil society. Authorities said that the rights of migrants and refugees will be respected on Tunisian soil.
Tunisia's national migration strategy has many components. A whole section is dedicated to undocumented migrants. Tunisia will defend their rights and protect them. They can either stay and work here if they arrived legally or leave to their countries of origin.
64 undocumented migrants were rescued Monday in territorial waters and taken to the port of Sfax after leaving a Libyan port. These migrants come from Somalia, Sudan and Eritrea.
Tunisian Premier Youssef al-Shahd declared during a meeting held in Zarzis that the refugees and migrants issue is not the responsibility of the Tunisian Republic alone. Al-Shahd called on all African and European countries to shoulder the responsibility to spare the country a difficult and unbearable situation. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
We are joined on the phone by Joel Millman, a senior spokesperson for the International Organization for Migration based in Geneva. Mr. Millman, a sad and heart-wrenching story indeed. What is the latest status of migrants and how does Libya come in? Joel?
Well, it's a sad and unfortunately repeated story. We've been seeing this now for 5 years, although on one positive note, the numbers are down significantly this year from previous years. What we know is, as your reporter offered, there were 4 survivors of a craft that had 86 when it left Libya on Monday. We know that quite a number of unaccompanied minors were traveling in the boat, as well as families that had small children. So we expect the numbers of minors and children to be quite high, although we don't have any new details since yesterday. Libya also continues to be a difficult security situation right now. We understand that the death toll from Tuesday's attack at Tajura was now at 53, and we understand that they're still trying to determine the identities and the nationalities of all the victims they've found so far.
All right. Joe, from your perspective, who or what is responsible for this migrant problem?
Well, first of all, we don't say problem. We like to say emergency in these situations. Migration is as old as humankind, and you can say who or what is responsible. I would say demographics are responsible, age difference, income difference, education. The fact that much of Africa is at peace for the last generation has created a generation that is eager and ambitious for improving their lives. They will go, Africans, Asians, Latin Americans, all peoples will go where they see opportunities to improve their condition. And we know that this is going to require some creative management among all the countries of the world, but we think it can be done. So try not to say migration problem, and try to talk about this as a management issue that's within which is within our grasp.
Well, in fact, it is a situation, as you correctly put it. Joel, from your perspective, though, before I let you go, what can African governments and international bodies do to help manage the situation?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. You know, one of the things we've been talking about, and many people have been talking about for quite some time, is a kind of a border-free Africa, Schengen, if you will, similar to Europe. We think a lot of migrants, well, all over the world, there are usually more migrants within a region than there are intra-region. Even in Asia, even in Latin America, the people that are leaving will stay close to their homes if that's a legal option. So open borders across Africa will mean that instead of looking for dangerous work or illegal work or risky work far away, they would be much happier taking work closer to their homes, closer to their families, where they could go back and forth freely. We know this is already working in Europe. We see examples of millions of people enjoying this in the Middle East. So why not Africa as well? So that would be one place to start. And of course, everything else is under discussion. Humanitarian visas, family reunification, temporary work permits. These are all things that can be extended. And these are the kinds of creative mechanisms that are well practiced and within our grasp to employ.
All right, Joel Millman, thank you for your insight and analysis. Moving on, Italian rescue group Mediterranea on Thursday took on board 54 migrants who were trying to reach Europe from Libya on a rubber dinghy. Among the rescued people were 11 women, of whom 3 were pregnant and 4 children. Let's take a look.
According to the Mediterranean crew, the Italian Coast Guard Central Command asked the Libyan Coast Guard to intervene at the scene.
I'm the doctor on board, and fortunately the Open Arms crew came to help for the medical assistance. We have only a 20-meter or 65 feet sailing boat, and we don't have all the necessary tools to react to all the medical needs.
The Italian group decided to take the migrants on board as they don't recognize Libya as a safe port due to the ongoing conflict.
I was in Libya all this while, but the country is not good for immigrants, not only for black people, but for all kind of people, because right now there is a war that is going on in Libya, and then people are not living large. Over 6 months, people are sitting there with no work. Even food, you have to call your people to help you for food. Le noir est au même pied d'égalité.
Black people are considered as animals in Libya. We are not considered at all. We got sold. Our women are raped. No health care for our children.
Nos femmes sont violées.
The Mediterranean asked Lampedusa for haven as the closest safe port. Spanish NGO Open Arms is also following the vessel and giving medical assistance.
We found the migrants on a rubber dinghy that was still functioning, but the problem was that we were in the Libyan search and rescue zone, and the Libyans were coming to pick them up, and therefore we quickly took them on board. We later got approached by the Libyan Coast Guard officers, but fortunately we managed to get away, and then they left.
Italian Minister of Interior and Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini said on Facebook that he opposes the arrival of the rescue ship in Italy and suggested that they head towards Tunisia. The dispute between the rescue group and the Italian government could generate yet another debate. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. The news continues. Here's a look at what's ahead. Nigeria oil pipeline fire in Lagos kills 2 after vandalism. Public outcry over a new $200 million parliament chamber in Ghana.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. In Nigeria, a petrol pipeline explosion has left 2 people dead and several injured in Lagos. Suspected vandals burst open the pipeline belonging to the state oil monopoly Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and were reportedly said to have stolen fuel from the pipeline when it went up in flames. Here is CGTN's Deji Batmas with more on that story.
It's become an all too familiar scene in this area of Lagos, where the state-owned NNPC pipelines pass through the ground. A similar incident in the area last December left over 100 houses and 50 vehicles burnt. This time, apart from the property destroyed, it's claimed 2 lives, suspected to be among the vandals.
We got alert around 5 a.m. that there was a fire outbreak, and immediately we made contact to NNPC, the safety units, on necessary actions to be done, especially shutting down the supplies from the 2 ends and the main depot, Atlas Cove. So unfortunately, we didn't record much casualty, but the vandals, 2 of them are involved, and about 12 others have varying degree of burns.
The fire is still raging, sending thick smoke into the sky around the area. The firefighters are doing all they can to ensure the fire is contained, but it's a lot of hard work.
The fire cannot be put out today because it's a supply. The first step to be taken is to shut down the supply so that it can suffocate the supplies. And once it's suffocated, then the next action is for fire safety men who are specially trained on pipeline fire to move in and put it out.
We are going to return this place to its normal function very, very soon. However, I appeal to the citizens of Lagos State that they should remain cool, calm, that their emergency responders, they are on top of all the challenges.
The fire consumed everything along the path where the petrol flowed, completely burning down vehicles and houses around. Authorities have launched an investigation into the incident, but people are very doubtful anything would come from that. They have seen it several times before, and they know this incident may not be the last. Deji Batmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In Ghana, there's a massive public outrage over plans to build a new 450-seat chamber for lawmakers at a cost of $200 million. Ghanaians are asking Parliament to justify why MPs need to spend so much on a new chamber while sectors like education and healthcare delivery are still underfunded. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
The Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Okwe, last week unveiled the design of the new parliamentary chamber block. The building has room for about 450 lawmakers and would house other facilities, including diplomatic offices, a library, and a museum. The current chamber has just 275 seats for MPs. According to the Speaker, this does not mean the number of MPs will be increased, but is intended with an eye towards the future. However, this has caused public outcry, with the policy think tank Ghana Center for Democratic Development describing it as a misplaced priority. But the Majority Speaker of Parliament, Oseichi Mensah Bonsu, says there is a need for a new chamber as the current structure housing MPs is no longer fit for purpose following a 2011 increase in the number of MPs.
Because we have had to increase the number to 275, there's serious encroachment on space, such that even the walkways now have become extremely narrow, such that perish the thoughts if there should be any unfortunate incidents which would require the rushing out. If we're not careful, it may result in a serious stampede, which may even perhaps result in the death of some members. We don't want to wait until such a thing happens.
Already, a campaign on social media with the hashtag #DropThatChamber is gathering momentum as many Ghanaians push for Parliament to abort its plans to build itself a new chamber. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
To the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where China's 22nd peacekeeping detachments in the country has launched the Ebola hemorrhagic fever epidemic prevention measures to prevent the spread of Ebola. The current Ebola epidemic is the 10th in the DRC since the first discovery of the Ebola virus in 1976 and has left at least 1,500 people dead.
China's 22nd peacekeeping detachments to DRC have more than 200 peacekeepers. We are dealing with tasks such as engineering construction and medical security at various points in the mission area. Facing the raging Ebola epidemic, the squad strictly implemented the epidemic prevention plan by disinfecting the camp and vehicle and doing body temperature detection.
Time now for a short break, but when we return, we'll have your business headlines. Let's take a look. The World Bank grants Kenya $750 million for housing projects. And load shedding intensifies in Zimbabwe severely, affecting already struggling businesses.
The coast of Western Africa is a ticking time bomb. Along this coast, danger lurks in and around the beautiful blue waters of the Atlantic Ocean.
You cannot stop children from exploring. You can tell them don't go near the water bodies, that they will eventually go.
Death by drowning is its name.
When we talk about drowning, it's seldom mentioned. We don't really focus more on it, but it's a silent killer that needs to be addressed.
Looking at drowning, why do people drown? What can we do to help people from drowning, especially children?
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Kenya's plans to build affordable housing and increase agriculture production has received a boost from the World Bank. The lender has released $750 million to fund the government plans. These are part of the government's Big Four agenda, which also aim to boost manufacturing and improve health care. The loan comes amid concerns that Kenya is taking on too much debt. This year alone, the country has also accessed a $1.25 billion syndicated loan and raised a $2.1 billion Eurobond. According to the country's central bank, government debt has more than doubled since 2013 to $52.8 billion by March. Debt services costs rose to 33.4% of revenue from 23.5% in 2013. African governments are being advised to embrace the use of blockchain technologies to curb high levels of corruption, check illicit financial flows, and eliminate poverty. The Sierra Leone President Julius Maada Bio says digital currency technologies will also help strengthen institutions and prevent the continent from losing billions of dollars. The Sierra Leone leader is attending the 2019 Africa Blockchain Conference in Uganda's capital, Kampala. CGTN's Michael Baleka has that report.
Computer technologies are driving industry in Africa, and the same innovations are now being integrated in state governance systems to drive economies. Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio says this is the only way Africa can tackle poverty.
Let's involve everybody, from you guys, the young guys leading this particular revolution, to those of us who have to create the enabling environment and the legal and regulatory framework for it to function in a way that it is not going to be too disruptive.
Sierra Leone is already incorporating blockchain technologies in the electoral process and financial systems, and this is in line with the focus of the 2019 Africa Blockchain Conference to prepare Africa for the fourth industrial revolution, which is primarily the use of internet innovations to change the way people live, work, and relate to one another.
The politicians tend to look at the internet from the angle of a product, like the way you go into a shop and you buy a phone. They haven't noticed that this is now a marketplace that connects billions of consumers who don't care where the product is coming from, for as long as that product, they can feel safe with it.
Kenya and South Africa have also begun implementing tech-friendly laws. Recently, Uganda launched a national task force that will oversee and advise on the adoption of the new tech innovations. Software developers say technology will be at the forefront of Africa's growth and that authorities need to move fast to adopt the smart innovations. But some African leaders are hesitant and moving cautiously with a view that the new tools may compromise national security. The leaders are also worried about the cost of shifting from the old technologies to the new era.
Personally, one concern that I have when we're trying to get more goods and services online, including e-government, access to health, access to education, and we have governments shutting down access to the internet, you're disrupting the lives. It's disrupting employment, it's disrupting delivery of health services. So how do we find the right balance?
As governments and the private sector explore ways to use blockchain to push value to service sectors, tech experts argue that there must be a deliberate move to change the education system to position young developers to build solutions for African problems. Michael Balekesi, GTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Kenya's Equity Group has acquired stakes in 4 regional banks from London-listed Atlas Mara. The Nairobi Securities Exchange-listed banking group is set to buy a 62% stake in Bank Populaire de Rwanda and take full ownership of Bank ABC Tanzania and Bank ABC Mozambique and Atlas Mara Zambia in a share swap deal valued at over $105 million. The Kenyan bank has said it intends to merge its subsidiaries in Rwanda and Tanzania with those of Atlas Mara's units in those markets to cut costs and enhance scale. Equity will, however, acquire the subsidiaries at an unspecified discount to account for their weak performance. And Zimbabwe's power crisis is getting worse. Load shedding has intensified with outages running up to 18 hours per day, forcing many businesses to improvise in order to survive. Here is CGTN's Farai Wakatuya with the details.
Welding rods and grinders light up the night sky like fireflies as small businesses turn their schedules upside down to cope with the extraordinary circumstances.
And that means reporting for duty at 11 p.m., which is when power is restored here, and trying to get as much done before it's switched back off again before daybreak.
The restricted hours are hurting production.
Normally I make 3 scotch cuts per day, but in the 6 hours of power that we get, I cannot even finish one. So business is low, because there's no way clients can give you more orders when you cannot even fulfill the ones that you have.
And taking a toll physically.
I fell ill after working in the cold for 2 nights in a row. I'm still not well, but I had to come or else my family will not eat.
There's growing frustration over the situation.
The government should make sure that we get better supply because we prepay for electricity, so it should be available when we need it.
A drought-induced drop in generation at Kariba Hydro Power Station sparked the crisis, which worsened after Zimbabwe was cut off by regional suppliers over piling arrears. Government, which has no answer for when the crisis will end, blames defaulters who owe power utility ZESA $1.2 billion for its failure to service the debt.
I need that money to come to ZESA. And when it comes to ZESA, we want it to be applied to situations that will increase or improve our generation of power. This matter is urgent, and we are taking or applying all efforts to make sure that we normalize the situation. We all need to be working together.
Right now, there's little work going on here. Even by day, some businesses like this fast food chain open only during peak lunchtimes to avoid running a generator throughout. A survival technique more are likely to adopt, with adverse impact on the economy. Farangwa Kutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
India has unveiled its budget for 2019-2020. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking to reverse weakening growth and investment that threatens to take the shine off his recent landslide election victory. Modi has set a target of turning India into a $5 trillion economy by 2024-2025, up from $2.7 trillion in 2018. Capital Economics said Friday that reaching that target is unlikely. That's because it's dependent in large part on achieving real GDP growth of 8% a year. The government also plans structural reforms to boost foreign and domestic investment. While China and the U.S. have agreed to restart talks to resolve their trade war, businesses in both countries are already coping with the impact of current tariffs and planning for what appears to be an uncertain future. In the U.S., millions of jobs could be at stake. CGTN's Hendrik Sebrandi reports from the state of Colorado.
It's the busy time of year for Old Glory fireworks, the days leading up to July 4th. America's birthday.
Sales are good. Everyone's anticipating a great 4th because it's been wet.
Meaning no restrictions on setting these things off. Virtually all of this Colorado company's merchandise is made in China and was ordered late last summer. Old Glory has yet to be touched by China's trade war with the U.S., but
we do anticipate and watch the news and get worried about what could happen in the next few months as we place our orders for the upcoming season.
At many firms, though, like this farm equipment dealer, tariffs have already hit.
It's really been our new sales that have been impacted.
Furniture made in China has become more expensive.
We're going to have to raise our prices.
Profits on items like headwear are starting to shrink.
I'm going to pay, my employees are going to pay.
And possibly many more American workers. A study by the U.S. Brookings Institution of last year's retaliatory tariffs imposed by China found more than 2 million jobs could be at risk across 40 different industries, including plastics, aircraft manufacturing, and pharmaceuticals.
It provides a sense and aura of uncertainty to 2 million employees, that's for sure.
The University of Denver's Doug Allen says other studies show an even greater employment impact. U.S. farm jobs, for example, have already been lost due to this issue. Allen adds many businesses are in a state of transition as they try to cushion themselves.
The disruption and the pain that is experienced by individual workers during that period of transition is going to be quite significant.
Some companies are rethinking plans to expand.
We need a new marketing manager. We put that hire on hold.
Some companies are rethinking their supply chains and looking at moving production out of China, ideally to the U.S.
Some items you can move. Candidly, there are a number of items you can't move. It's not as simple as saying, oh, make it in America, because candidly, the production capacity for certain items just doesn't exist.
And of course, Chinese workers are at risk too.
A tariff battle is sort of a barbaric way of negotiating, and you have collateral damage on both sides.
The person in charge of hiring at one tariff-affected company says these are uncertain times for her 50 workers.
It can be challenging and it's scary for people.
The storm clouds of tariffs are not that far off at Old Glory, which has 100 seasonal workers.
And we think, oh my gosh, that would be horrendous to our business. We're anxious, in finding out whether that's going to be a problem.
That anxiety is being felt by employer and employee alike. Hendrik Sebrandi, CGTN, Denver.
Well, the news continues on Africa Live. We have a lot more amazing, wonderful, and inspiring stories coming your way. Here's a look at what's ahead. Imagination Africa highlights the importance of play in childhood development in Senegal.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. An organization in Senegal is looking to highlight the importance of play in a child's development. Through various programs such as museums, exhibitions, Imagination Africa creates hands-on experiences where children can learn about their world. CGTN's Astatal delved deeper.
Cœur Imagination is Senegal's first cultural and educational hub built just for children. The hub, which was established in 2015, is part of Imagination Africa, an NGO founded by Karima Grant. Their various programming caters to children from a few months all the way to 14 years old.
What we try to do here in Imagination Africa is change the idea of education to expand it to this paradigm of learning. We want and we know children are the best motors for their own kind of learning.
Here in the playgroup, facilitators enable children to take the lead as they play. Something as simple as pretending to cook can turn into a mini math lesson, as the children count how many cups of water they put into a bowl. The props all around Cœur Imagination are created in collaboration with children and local artists. Children can learn about Dakar's expanding highway by building their own toll booth, or they'll learn about underwater creatures by painting a mural. Whether it's chemistry, math, or history, at the core of Imagination Africa's philosophy is allowing children a hands-on experience.
All across Africa, we're focused on entrepreneurship and tech culture, but all of that stuff, begins when we have and we built those competencies at very young ages, right? One of the things that makes an entrepreneur is that ability to do, to think, to create, right? To test. That's how children learn. So why not honor those processes? Why not give them innovation at an early age?
Parents and caretakers are also encouraged to participate, from classes on first aid and preventing domestic accidents to teaching parents how to let their children problem solve on their own terms. Imagination Africa also tackles issues affecting children in society. Among them is the rapid urbanization of Dakar. As infrastructure continues to grow in the city, children have less spaces they can play in. Imagination Africa explores this in their series, Walking with Amadou, a series of short videos which shows Dakar from a child's perspective and highlights the challenges they face.
We want children to understand that spaces in Africa are not hostile to them, that it's not me against the environment, right? So that's one. Two, it supports their parents, right? Because we want mothers and fathers and grandmothers to be the best parents they can be. All of those spaces are tremendous opportunities for us, particularly in urban settings, to transform them into learning environments.
Through play, exploration, and hands-on learning, the organization looks to explore the full potential of children on the continent. Astatal, CGTN, Dakar, Senegal.
All right, it's time now for our sports news. Don't touch that dial, don't go away. Let's take a sneak peek at what's coming up.